It's been after all this time that I've started to realize that there's something that's really been irking me as of late. And it's whenever I look at the gaming industry today, what it's currently becoming, and when I look at many products within movies, television, and I see what happens to all of them. Something that I've been realizing, something I've been noticing more and more as all this time has gone by with all of our franchises being hijacked. Something that I've seen is the reason why I've come to hate and loathe popular media. And you see, here's what happens with popular media, right? It starts as something sincere, kindred of its own form. It is authentic and it is real. It creates all the things which entices a viewer, which brings a viewer in. It's all the lure and all the bait that it takes to get you to snag onto the hook. But then something happens, and that's once you've fallen in love with what they've given you, with what they are willing to express to you, you pick up a game and there's hot women in it. And you see a chick with a nice rack, nice cleavage. Maybe in the game they sexualize her here and there in specific ways. Maybe even there's a sex scene, right? Whatever it is, you see a desirable, attractive female in desirable and attractive circumstances. And we like these products and we like these games for that very reason. But the thing that has become very clear, and the number one thing I've started to realize, the reason why I hate popular media is that it all gets hijacked in the end. Once you find something that you love, it becomes hijacked. Once it's been cultivated across enough time, it starts to cultivate enough of an audience, grow and fester enough of this audience that will come to police that exact product which we've come to love. All the exact stories, events, characters that we've come to love, and we love them for very simple reasons. Lara Croft is a hot chick running around just doing something that she's ultimately the hot chick on a man's journey. We don't care that she's on a man's journey. We care that it's a hot chick. We care that it's a game where I can play basically as instead of playing as Nathan Drake, I'm playing as a freaking hot chick with a nice rack. I get to stare at her butt. I get to stare at her thighs. And I get to stare at her, again, her giant rack. She looks sexy. And I enjoy looking at a sexy female as I'm playing the game. Instead of looking at a dude, right? And there's nothing wrong with male protagonists and looking at them and just being like, oh, cool, that guy's, buff and masculine, cool. But we're all here for characters like Lara Croft because it's a hot, busty chick. And no one really gave a crap necessarily who was underneath the suit of armor when it came down to Samus until they realized that Samus was a hot, blonde, Aryan chick. You were like, God, hey. And that's when everyone got most obsessed with that character. That's why that character from, what is it called? Metroid Prime or whatever. That's why we remember that game. And that's why we remember Samus. Because it's a hot chick. So when I look at these games, though, what's happened is that gaming, for one, has turned into a police state. And specifically, it's all this popular media has become a police state. Once these games, and once any of these products within movies, television, or gaming become successful and popular, what you will notice have happen constantly, all of the time, persistently across time. You will notice that you will find these weirdos. When something becomes popular, the normal people who footed the dollar, loving that thing that they found, that they globbed onto, and that they invested all this time, money, effort, energy with, what you will find is that it begins to slowly attract the weirdos, the losers. It begins to attract the very people who will invade and hijack that exact property, that exact product. And they'll do everything in their power to invade what we love in order to insert their politics, and specifically to insert their dogmatic beliefs. That has nothing to do with reality or normality. What is normal? What is normative? And instead to insert their degeneracy and their lack of psychological and sexual maturity. What ends up happening, and this is why I've come to loathe popular media, is when I pick something up and I realize I really like this. It's great. it's beautiful, it's fun, whatever it is. There's something to love about the thing that I've picked up. A group of fevorous, moronic children will come in, swooping in, infesting the purity of the things that we love with their own immodesty and their perversions. It's happened with Final Fantasy, for one. It's happened, of course, with Naughty Dog. It's happened with Uncharted, of course. Happened a little bit there. You know, we can already think of all the things with Naughty Dog that it happened with. Of course, Last of Us 2, but it happened with God of War. It's happened with Tomb Raider. It's happened with Spider-Man. It's even happened with things like Alan Wake. A little bit more niche, but still, even the niche have been attacked. The more popular even something niche gets. And it's even happened with things like Persona 5, which I only really liked the beginning of the game, but it's happened with Metal Gear Solid, right? Well, and those games are done now, but if they kept on going, they would have just gotten woker and woker. But here's what happens. When we find something that we love, we invest into it. What happens is that these developers, they cultivate a growing audience. And the audience gets so large that they begin to assume that they have curated for themselves, or rather, a better word for it, they've cultivated for themselves what they believe to be a global audience, air quotes. Now, the truth of the matter is, they did not ever cultivate a global audience, and there is no such thing as a global audience. You will never find the globe valuing all things equally across individuals, cultures, demographics. It'll never happen. What you did was cultivate your demographic, your audience. Whatever the authenticity is of your product and the value that your product inherently possesses, that is exactly what is selling. And that is exactly what, depending on the quality and the execution of the idea, that is what will make the most amount of money in a product and cultivate the highest oncoming audiences or viewers, right? Those who invest in your product. But what you have to realize is that this is never a global audience. But whoever is making these different products, they assume that this is a global audience. So what begins to happen? They will pander. And for long stretches of time, they will begin to suddenly involve more pandering. And progressively things get more and more, as we're seeing in the modern age, woke, and woke. The more something becomes beloved for what it is, and it starts to be turned into the things it is not. For instance, Little Mermaid is what? Ariel is white, red hair. She is not black. What do? They assume that they have a global audience. What do? They pander, and they service themselves to turning Ariel, a white girl, into a black girl. That is not the character. That's not the culture from which it stems. The culture was Anglo-Saxon, white people, very simple. And what they did is they turned a white girl and replaced her with a black. Because they begin to pander, believing that, well, because we have a product that so many people love, and there's so many different people now that love this product, and it's not because we actually know who the people are, it's because there's so many people, and at least their personalities are different. That's enough reason to guess that because there's probably a very high range of personality difference, they're probably different by sex, race, and go down the list of all the random things they want to make up of all the different people. So then what they do is they pander these products and they take away from you the things that you love. They destroy the inherent identity of why you even loved the thing in the first place. And they do that to pander to a made-up audience, because now they view upon themselves that they have a globalist product, a global audience and a global market, and therefore we must pander to audiences outside of the product's value, the product's inherent value, and the product's cultivating value. We must now create extensions of that product to reach out outside of our main cultivation zone. So that's what they do. And we end up seeing random white people turning into black, random regions with white characters, white stories, white people. Suddenly you have Asian, suddenly you have some other random race here and random race there, maybe Islamic, maybe Indian. You just start throwing people everywhere. And slowly we start to destroy the very things that we love and the very identity of what made us even love it in the first place. Furthermore, when you look at what happens within the industry, what you will also find is that suddenly the police state nannies start running in and running through. They start to dominate the topics. They start to know life with their ideological, fanatical positions. They want to turn normality into their degeneracy. Their irregularity, they wish to impose upon you. All of their suppositions becomes to coddle, to pander, and to censor all the things to which you loved. The best products are often the most offensive products. The best products also happen to be the most exclusionary products. A great story will often have something insulting within it. A great story will often have something that is the exclusion of all other things, because it is the pinnacle of all things. You look at a character like Superman. He is the pinnacle of man. He is the exclusion of most men. He is the ideal of the American man. That is who Superman represents. He is a white man because America was a white country, is a white country, and of course many people are doing everything in their power to turn it away from that. But that is why Superman is a character. That is why they're killing him now. He is a white character from a white country. He represented the American ideal, the American man, and that ideal. Well, now we're killing that character. What does that mean? We're killing that ideal, and we're killing everything that comes with it. But that's just one layer. And what you will find is that these people will begin the mental gymnastics to tell you, well, there's this really attractive female character that all of you men get really obsessive about, and it's really outdated. You see, it is now 2022, and because it's a new year, new argument, new winning argument, and because of that new winning argument, we now have to change everything that you love. Because for some reason, it's a new year, therefore, my political stance wins. And therefore, right, things are so outdated, we have to now change an attractive female character. We have to button her up. We can't have cleavage anymore. She can't have large breasts anymore. She can't have an attractive facial symmetry or a certain level of face cleanliness and health. Right? She has to have a bunch of smudges. She has to have a bunch of blemishes on her face because for some reason, it's outdated to have attractive women in anything. What begins to happen then is they begin to create all these random arguments, random ways to talk about why you love something is wrong and why that thing must be invaded, why it must be arbitrarily hijacked and changed into the image of the hijacker. So over time, what you begin to notice, what you begin to see, is they'll come up with arguments like, why are you fetishizing women? What's wrong with you? You're fetishizing women. That's so weird. Oh my gosh. We look at Tifa in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Why are you naughty, terrible, disgusting men? Why are you fetishizing her? How dare you? Don't you know that you're a creep? Don't you know that you're a weirdo? Fetishizing a woman with large breasts, a thin waist because she isn't an unhealthy mongrel who's stuffing her face every day. Maybe she does a little bit of cardio. Don't you know there's something wrong with you? Because you just don't understand the reality that most women, normal women, are fat lards walking around like land whales, and you have to accept it and love it. You have to accept the new normal. You have to accept the obesity of degenerate women, undisciplined women, and you have to believe that that is now normal, that is now regular. And what they do is they will invade your product. They will begin to tell you that we must be coddled in this way. You must censor for this purpose. We are sensitive over this thing. You must now curtail yourself to our sensitivities. And why I hate popular media is because you have all these random groups. Some are made up. The developers make up who the random groups are. They start pandering to people who don't exist. And then there are people who just notice that everyone loves this thing. And because they're losers, and because they have nothing else going on, they invade that thing. And they're like, well, because everyone else loves it, and because I'm a follower and I can't think for crap on my own, I'm just going to invade the thing that everyone loves because I can't figure out what to love myself, and I can't even make anything to love for myself. I'm going to hijack this, and then I'm going to tell the people that love this thing for the thing that is common sense, and no one even has to speak or prove why they love women with large breasts, for instance. No, instead, now I'm going to put them in the constant position where they have to defend themselves. I'm going to attack their position day in and day out. I'm going to fatigue them over defending the things that they love until they just quit and they give up, and then that thing gets destroyed, it gets invaded, and now it's all gone. And those people who love this thing, they may never get something back. And if they do, it's going to take a lot of work to get it back, because for some reason they're too cowardly to fight, to take back the thing that is being hijacked, to push out and gatekeep the losers and the weirdos. It's not just a character, of course, like Tifa. You will find this that it happens with Persona 5 with Catherine, or whatever the frick the chick's name is. Anne? She looks like Catherine from that one older game that had Catherine in it. She was a busty chick, and it was a weird loopy game. Anyways, the Anne chick, the chick that's in the sexy devil's costume, right? Well, there's something wrong with a female that is being, right? We have to use these words like fetishize. Oh, we're fetishizing her. Oh, how dare you? What's wrong with you? Are you such a twisted, demented man that you have to objectify a young woman? How dare you? Don't you know that you should be into dudes instead? Don't you know that it is healthy and normal to be a raging homosexual, or even better yet, a raging asexual plant? Don't you know that's better? Don't you know that that is the enlightened path of humanity? Don't you know that that's what's been held from us, kept from us for all these generations? You ought to be a twisted and demented asexual plant with a slight tendency for homosexuality. That is what they want. That is what they demand of you. And that is when they hijack these properties, that is what they will begin to pester you about, day in, day out. Suddenly, you are constantly on the defensive, rather than watching a video game that you love, seeing a developing romance between, for instance, Cloud and Tifa, and loving the fact that Tifa is looking for the male character to come and save her. That's a whole premise of her character, a huge premise between her relationship and Cloud. And Cloud, he made the promise to her, a masculine promise. I'm going to protect you when the day comes that I need to save you. And that is a sense of, in some sense, chivalry. Not entirely, right? There's other elements of chivalry, but that's an element of a chivalric kind of mentality. The idea that a woman is holding out, pining out for a man that's going to uphold his burden of responsibility for her. And then on the duality of it, that the man desires for a woman that he so chooses, right? That he finds himself desiring whatever he pledges himself for in some manner, some way. That he wishes and he strives to live up, to be of utility and service to the woman that he has chosen to love, right? And so we see this story about a beautiful woman in a perseverant, aspiring male, and their kindling relationship. And we love to see that development. What happens when these products get popular? And this happens with so many other products, other games, right? We saw it happen in its own ways with Last of Us. We saw it happen with, of course, in its own ways with God of War. We have certain payoffs of certain characters, certain relationships that we want to see cultivate in specific manners. Specifically, like, for instance, we wanted to see Ellie, after the first Last of Us game, we wanted to see her live a normal girl's life, right? She gets a surrogate father. Joel becomes a surrogate father to the surrogate daughter. We want to see them be normal, right? And find a kind of normal father-daughter dynamic between the two of each other, despite the state of a global catastrophe, the zombie apocalypse. But in that whole catastrophe, we also were hoping that in the sequel, Ellie would have started having a normal girl's pubescent kind of developmental journey, right? She's coming into her body. She's starting to develop in certain ways. Suddenly, she's paying attention to boys. Boys are paying attention to her because she's starting to grow, right? She's starting to mature. And in that, she meets a random boy. They come into some random village, whatever happens there was a whole way that they could have gone with the sequel. They didn't go that direction. Instead, they just subverted and deconstructed all the characters and all the storylines, all the plot. What it should have been, though, in the sequel, right, was that Ellie meets a boy and they start having a kindling romance, and they're trying to restore the order of the world despite the catastrophe of the apocalypse, despite the life that they left, where Joel obviously made the choice that they shouldn't make the cure and that she shouldn't die, right? The next game should have been about how Ellie is coming into being a woman and she's developing a relationship with a young man, and they start to, right, feel out for each other, their gender dynamics. And we see this really affable, endearing story about a surrogate father who's watching his growing daughter start to have a relationship with a young boy. And that's what we should have seen. That's what we all wanted to see. What do these weirdos do? They invade the product and they say, with anything like Last of Us, a whole bunch of other games, but, right, the previous example I was giving with Final Fantasy VII, and suddenly you see these endearing scenes between normal dynamics between the two genders. And what you begin to find is that now you know in the back of your head the creeping voice of these loser weirdos saying and whining, "Oh my gosh, how is that a woman? Why is she being fetishized?" And just insert whatever else you want the freaking cackling loser to be talking about, right? They'll be sitting there and be upset about, why does Tifa keep on wanting Cloud to save her? They'll hate on the fact that Tifa wants a man to save her, that Cloud wants to be the man to save a girl that specifically of his choosing, being Tifa, right? They will hate on the fact that Tifa is sexualized, that there's any cleavage on Tifa, so we must neuter that, right? We have to put on a bunch of undershirts on Tifa rather than just letting her breasts be defined by the clothing that she's wearing and not trying to cover her up everywhere. Now we have to make up a bunch of random, arbitrary, in-game, in-world lore bits or rules about, well, you see, this is the reason why we're trying to cover up, because for this really logical reason for why we're just trying to censor before your eyes an attractive female, right? There's something wrong with you seeing the attractive sorry, we want to find a way without saying it that there's something wrong looking at an attractive female. So we're just going to come up with a random example or reason as to the in-game lore-wise reason to why we should censor this female, or why we should censor this thing that you love. We're going to censor certain words. We're going to censor certain jokes. We're going to censor someone calling the other person some kind of slur because you can't hear someone for some reason say a slur, even though we like hearing characters say things offensive to other characters. There's something realistic about it, and also, we don't want to have characters talk to each other in a story in such a way that they coddle one another. But this is slowly what happens. You're watching a scene between, say, Cloud and Tifa. Now you know in the back of your head, there's someone complaining about her breast size, or they're complaining about the fact that Tifa isn't an independent girl boss, or they're complaining about the fact that they're both straight and for some reason they're not asexual or gay. They're going to be complaining about the fact that there's not enough representation for some kind of degeneracy, or why is this story about white people? Why does it have so many white people? We need to force in a bunch of other people of other backgrounds for no good reason. So then they start to vouch for and vie for the inclusion of people who don't need to exist in the story, the people who have no relevance within the cultural background of the story. And now we have to turn everything into a multicultural cesspit where it becomes completely illogical. It's like we're in an Anglo-Saxon area of the world, or let's say it's a Japanese story and there's just a bunch of Japanese people. And for some reason, I keep seeing a bunch of people of other races in this area, and you know implicitly, you're looking around, you're looking at it, and you're saying to yourself, you know, it's really weird that there's a bunch of black people in this area where everyone's a Buddhist. I don't remember that Buddhism was specifically, or Hinduism, or anything of the like. It's specifically a black person's religion. That's really weird. Oh, that's weird. You see a lot of Asian people in a very Catholic environment in this random game. Huh, that doesn't really line up. That's weird. Slowly, we start to infect these products in popular media with things that don't belong, things that don't exist naturally, things that are not normal. And that is across the entire range, whether it's culture, whether it's gender dynamics. The stark realization, though, that I've come down to in realizing why I hate popular media is that I realize the losers start to pay attention. And when the losers are paying attention, they're the ones who infect and infest the media. They're the ones who start telling you that the things you love are wrong. That why do you love this story with all these white people? Don't you know it's bigoted? That there's not enough black people? We should obviously just start throwing in random black people because for some reason that enriches the story. They'll start telling you that why is there no gay people? There's something so bigoted about you. For some reason, you love this product that doesn't have gay people in it, and we should really be forcing in more gay people. So then we start to have these degenerate relationships be thrust into games where you have people who are attracted to each other that shouldn't be attracted to each other. You have characters that should be straight. Suddenly they're gay baiting all the time. You see that within Final Fantasy 16, for instance. They started gay baiting with certain characters, including the straight ones. You start seeing this disgusting, postmodernist, horse water dog crap that no one ever asked for, that no one has ever liked. They force it into Star Wars, they force it into Lord of the Rings even. They force this degenerate horse crap everywhere. And it's because once something has become popular, it gets invaded. Instead of you now spending all of your time enjoying and indulging in what you enjoy and what you love, now you constantly have to defend it. You see a sexual scene between an attractive female and the respective man in the story, probably the protagonist. Now there's something wrong with sexualizing women. Now, to sexualize women is to fetishize women, right? And now you have to defend, if you accept their position, to believe that you're soy boy enough to have to defend such a position. You start sitting there and you're defending for your life why a sexy, attractive female should even be in the game, why she shouldn't be plus sized, right? Now you have to defend random arguments about how realistic women are overweight and they're fat slobs that are disgusting, smelly yeast infections. And suddenly you have to defend why a woman cannot defend herself and why the male character has to defend her and why the male character's world is his world and not the female character's world or shared world, right? Why is it always the men who get the heroic stories? Why is it always the men who get the heroic victories? And why is it always the men that the whole story's about? Why is it always their journey and women are just always along for the ride? Because that's the gender dynamic. That's reality. That is how men and women have always operated across time, history, and now. That is what reality is. Men carve the path to the future, and women simply are along for the ride, and sometimes maybe they'll help the man alongst his ride. But women are not girl bosses, and that is a made-up feminist archetype and trivialization of gender roles and dynamics. And so this is the issue, and this is why I've come to find of why I hate popular media. Once media has become popular, you have people who are illogical, moronic adult children who will go out of their way telling you that why you love what you love is wrong. They'll sit there and tell you that everything has to be made now in their image, right? We need more fat people. We need more gay people. We need more ugly people in games. What is wrong with you, you bigot? Why do you like this story with attractive people and attractive women with the traditional gender roles? What is wrong with you? They'll start doing that. And they'll start demanding for pandering. They'll start guilting you and shaming you incessantly for not including themselves, which happens to be a loser, in the product. And of course, what they wish to do is they wish to turn the thing that you love, and they're paying attention to it because people love it, and they wish to turn the thing which is loved for what it is and to inherently transform it into something that inherently will not be loved and is not characteristic of what will be ever loved. Because they could just go make their crap, their horse water dog crap, but they don't, because they know it doesn't sell and they know nobody wants it. So they have to go look at what everyone does love, what everyone does want, and they have to go shame you and guilt you for it and then hijack it. No longer can you simply enjoy and indulge what you love. Now you must defend it. And this is why I hate popular media, because it immediately becomes a pandering device. For one, consecutive products progressively become woke and woker. Over time, the characters, which are given the raw value to which you desire, that should be unspoken because it's common sense, right? Seeing an attractive woman with large breasts with cleavage or some kind of sexualizing outfit. Now that starts to be revoked from you. Now it starts to be censored from you. Now you begin to be shamed and guilted for it. How dare you like that? You think like a child, desiring women of attractive standard. It becomes a platform for politics. It becomes a podium for these hijackers to preach to you about their political dogma, their subversive dogma. And fundamentally what begins to happen is you will realize that the popular media, you didn't realize it was going to become so popular, but the fact that it had so much latent value, you begin to realize that these moralizing weirdos and losers, what they've done is that they have turned your favorite game, your favorite movie, your favorite television show into a police state. And for that very reason, the new normal are the shackles and bonds that they tie around your hands and feet, and the pig trough funnel that they force feed down your throat.